Now, one of the things that President Trump has been trying to do is trying to rein in drug prices. Now, has he been successful? Largely no. According to analysts at Wells Fargo, pharmaceutical companies have been, instead of lowering prices, have been aggressively raising their prices. Now, Wells Fargo analysis of Wolter Kluwer Price RX data found that companies have raised medicine costs by 27% on average last month. Now, they get into further details on which companies have been doing this. A subsidiary of Teva Pharmaceutical Industries hiking the price for a generic antidiuretic by 909%. 909% for a generic. Hey, we think we can make money off this antidiuretic drug or diuretic, and so let's just raise it by 909%. Now, you guys might have remembered or recalled the story that I did from an insider in the pharmaceutical industry. This is a woman who worked for Eli Lilly, and she said that the conversations that they had when discussing how much to charge for a particular drug were completely arbitrary. Where at first they said, well, okay, let's do $500 a dose. And then somebody in the meeting just said, let's do $10,000 a dose. With no justification, no explanation. And furthermore, even worse, the boss saying, you know what? I agree with that because if it were your grandma on the table, well, you wouldn't hesitate to pay that price. I mean, it is truly a sickening thing that we see in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, more examples here. Closely held Epic Pharma LLC came in second of the top price increases, jacking up prices on two versions of its drug by 399%. Merck & Company, Fresenius SE, Novartis, AG Sandoz, and Spectrum Pharmaceuticals Incorporated were on the list. Wells Fargo had found that there were more price increases in June overall compared with the previous month. Drug companies have raised their cost of 106 medicines compared to 101 in May, according to analyst David Maris. Now, in a note, he said this, quote, and this would be why they're continuing their aggressive price increases. Quote, it appears to us now that criticism from politicians and the president has quieted down. Companies are more aggressively and broadly pursuing price increases again. We are not so confident that the lull in criticism will continue and can foresee more negative headlines in the coming months. No kidding. Really? No, I mean, when you raise the price of a drug by 909% for no other reason than to fill your pockets, yeah, of course you're going to get negative headlines. I mean, it's freaking ridiculous. Now, what is the administration doing about it? Again, Donald Trump promised, I'm going to bring down drug prices because right now what they're doing is they're getting away with murder. And I agree with that. Now, Trump, one thing he attempted to do, and, look, I'm going to explain first what it is and why it wouldn't be all that effective, but at least it's something. He attempted to force companies to put prices of their drugs on air. Now, that wouldn't be entirely accurate, as that's not necessarily the price that you would pay, but more your insurance. And by the way, that's probably one reason why your insurance is so high, because these drug manufacturers basically say, we want the maximum amount that insurance companies will pay, and they pass on the cost the insurance companies do to you in the form of really, really expensive premiums and co-pays and deductibles. Now, the rule would have required all drug makers to include in their television commercials the list price of any drug that costs more than $35 a month. Now, you guys know there ain't a lot of drugs that cost less than $35 a month. So this would be very impactful industry-wide. Now, the reason that I say that it wouldn't be effective is because while it would show prices and provide some transparency, would there be a whole lot of incentive to change that? I mean, yes, now you know that these drugs are super overpriced. Maybe that will create more outrage. Maybe that will, try to shame these companies into lowering their drug prices. But as you can see already, it really hasn't. I mean, as soon as there's a lull, as soon as there's not as many negative headlines about drug pricing, they immediately more aggressively push up their prices. So what we've been doing has not been effective. Now, here's the thing, though. This thing that would have not been very effective at all, really, but would have been, I guess, better than nothing, was rejected by an Obama judge. I'm not kidding, right? An Obama-era judge. Now, to be honest, he's like, okay, you have to go to Congress. You can't just order these drug companies. You have to have an act of legislation. And so he wasn't necessarily against the rule itself, but was against the implementation. And so, okay, look, if Congress can get together, do that, that would be at least something. But again, wouldn't really do anything to lower drug prices. Now, the other plans from Donald Trump and his administration is urging them to do voluntary price decreases. Hey, drug companies, you should lower your price. You know what they're going to do? Number one, they're going to laugh in your face. And number two, they're going to continue to raise prices. I mean, oh yeah, no, we're going to ask a corporation to take less in profit. How do you think that's going to go? Not very well. Now, Trump also said he would be issuing an executive order on pricing, but there's really no detail. Other things that the administration has come up with is proposing allowing older adults to more directly benefit from drug rebates in Medicare. Wow. And tying the cost of some drugs to the price in other countries. Well, that might be a little bit more effective and a little bit more interesting. How about allowing the importation of cheaper drugs from other countries like Canada? And that might help. Reining in Big Pharma. But so far, nobody's really done anything or proposed anything that is effective that could get through Democrats and Republicans in Congress. And by the way, a lot of the criticism, yes, can be lobbed at Donald Trump or some of it, but also a lot of can be pointed at the Democrats or Congress as a whole. Why? It's because both parties receive a lot of money from drug companies. The pharmaceutical industry is one of the biggest lobbyists in Congress. Now, Republicans do get more in lobbying from these companies, especially in recent years. But let's not forget, a lot of Democrats have taken a lot of money from these companies as well. So they bought essentially both sides. And that's basically disincentivized them to come up with a real solution. And that's all while these companies continue to rub it in our face by raising prices of drugs by 900%. If you've been wondering why this problem has not been solved, it is because there is a lack of will to do so. And the reason there is a lack of will to do so is because of the money. It is the corruption. That is what we are facing. That is why we have to get the money and therefore the corruption out of our politics if we're ever going to solve this issue or any other issue that impacts Americans' lives. Right now, these drugs are out of reach for a lot of Americans. There are people that are dying from lack of access to these drugs. There are incredibly expensive insurance premiums now, partly because of this, partly because of the profit motive, and mostly having to do with, of course, the fact that these companies have a gigantic influence on our politics and our politicians. Remove the corruption, and you can solve these issues, and you can actually have a healthcare and a system and a government that works for us and not these corporations whose sole job is to maximize profit at any cost. Remember, one of the bosses of Eli Lilly said, hey, look, if your grandma's on the table, you will not think twice about paying our outrageous prices for those drugs to save her life. That is the mindset. That is their mentality. They have no humanity and no shame because these corporations are robots. And we have to rein them in. and eliminate their ability to influence our politicians. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.